All right, here we go, day 2. Spirits are still high after a little bit of a rough day yesterday, but the rain has all moved through pretty much, and the temperatures have dropped about 20 degrees, and I think they're actually supposed to get colder as the morning goes on here. We got pretty high winds and wet conditions, so Zach and I are shifting gears a little bit, and we went to the hill country today. Aaron and I have been hunting more cattail marshes, and we figured we'd head to the hills today. Zach and Logan have been doing some scouting and seeing some pretty good signs, so we're gonna get out, walk around a little bit. We got pretty perfect conditions for sneaking around, so we're gonna kind of mess around in the bedding area this morning a little bit and see if we can find some good sign. Maybe run into a few deer. The parking lot of this place is down on the bottom, and that's where me and Zach started this morning, obviously. We were dropping milkweed, it was going every direction pretty much. But I mentioned earlier it's super windy today. So we got about halfway up this ridge, and since we moved up here, the wind's pretty consistent. It's just pretty much carrying back over our shoulders. So we're probably just gonna keep working all morning with the wind in our face. Like I mentioned, it's so windy that I think if we keep moving slow, we could definitely walk up on some deer that are either bedded or still haven't bedded down for the day yet. So we're gonna keep kind of popping over these ridges and glassing a bunch and then moving slow down through them and see if we can pick out any deer. Well, we just had some excitement here. It kind of went downhill. Zach's pretty mad at himself right now, I can tell. We just jumped a pretty big buck right here over my shoulder. I don't know, 25 yards. He ran down through this bottom here, and then, I don't know what, 3-4 other deer went bolting out. We were kind of calling this spot off just because we hadn't seen much sign. We were just going to get down to this access path that you can see over my shoulder, and we were going to start moving down that access path and maybe find a setup for this evening at least. But now we kind of have an idea at least that we jumped some deer, what kind of terrain they're hanging out in. So I don't know if we'll keep burning through this or maybe just pull out of this area and maybe go check out a few other ones. But
just sit here for a little bit and look where he went, and where he was, and just mark it off.
Look at the maps.
I don't really even know that we need to look at that bed at all. I don't even know that we want to get any closer to it.
Yeah. Well, we just found the GoPro after Zach was a little disappointed in himself for not hitting record. We also realized that he lost the GoPro, so we had to go back and find that.
Totally messed up and not real happy with myself about missing that buck running down through there. I would have got just a little bit of footage, but when I opened the camera, I hit record too soon, I guess, before the camera was actually on.
But you can take our word for it, it was pretty big. Sometimes we get a little excited, but he was for sure big, and there might have been a couple more.
I think what's interesting, though, is we bumped one deer, and then we bumped all the rest of the deer. And sadly, this time, the first deer that we bumped was the big buck.
Yep.
I think if we would have bumped into some does earlier, then we might have seen that buck. We'd have just been patient, let's put it that way. We'd have just kept looking down in this bottom, because, you know, if you start bumping into deer when you're scouting an area like this, just stop, be patient, because you might spot one and then be able to make a move on it.
Yeah, on a windy day like today, if he hadn't run right through the middle of all those other deer and he would have just cut down kind of back where we came from or something, those other deer would have never had a clue. And that's why we're pretty optimistic still. We're not positive that buck's going to be back in here within the next 5 days that we're here. We think there's definitely a chance, but we're really confident that one of the other several bucks that were with him will be back in here, just because they didn't have a clue what happened. All they know is that he came tearing through there. They don't necessarily know what type of predator it was, and they all know that they escaped unscathed, so they'll be pretty confident that they can come back in this bedding area.
We were talking about how nice it would be for a deer to bed on this hillside, because you might be able to tell behind us the access path is right down there, and those deer are able to lay here and watch that. They can stand up in their bed in here. They got all kinds of browse around them.
People generally aren't going to come from where we came from, and that wasn't exactly by design. We were just kind of going to hunt our way through here, and then we kind of came in from the backside of these bucks, where I think they would probably sit tight and just watch whoever's hunting walk in down the access path. And unless they come off the path where they feel like they're in danger, they'll just watch them walk right past. They see it all the time, I'm sure. Tomorrow morning, if the conditions are right, we're going to try to be right back in here.
As far as coming in here to actually set up, we're going to probably just come down the access path in the morning, being really quiet. We're going to loop into this spot and try to get right down below these deer, probably 50 yards from where they were bedded today.
Yep.
There's a good chance that they're going to be bedded somewhere else, but even if they're passing through here browsing in the morning, which is something that we expect them to do, we'd say we got a pretty good chance There's probably a couple tree stand setups. There's probably a couple ground setups down there. We're not really sure what we're going to do yet.
And now that we jumped here in a spot like this, we can see another spot exactly like that a couple ridges over, and we can look at it related on the map and just check out other spots exactly like this.
Yep. We're going to just take a few more mental notes here. Probably going to come back here at some point. I think it's a pretty good spot if there's that many bucks living in here.
What a tank. He's 17, 18 inches wide, 10-point frame, body like a Twinkie.
I think he was a 10-pointer, wasn't
Yeah.
he? What do you expect a Minnesota buck to look like? Like, it just looked like a Minnesota buck. You know, just a big old dark thing with dark antlers. Its just neck was like that big. Win some and, you know.
You spook most.
What's up, guys? It's day 2 of the Public Land Challenge. And Garrett from DIY Sportsman just got here. Got Dan Infault and Joe Rimpmeister from the Hunting Beast. Jake's got a tag in our crew. And Hayden Krimmer came over from Legendary Whitetails, and he's also hunting public land just up the road this morning. So lots of folks out today. Got some perfect weather. Rain moved through last night. And
looks good. Someone's gonna kill one today.
someone's probably gonna kill one today.
It feels like October out here. Don't even feel like September.
Septober.
Septober.
Too bad bucks don't move in October.
Hayden got one we jumped on. Infault's probably going to shoot like 5 of them tonight. I'm just kidding, that's not legal. He wouldn't do that.
What's this rig, Garrett?
Good little hammock setup.
Just tie a tarp over the top of it, keep you dry?
Yep, we got the tarp to keep the elements off, and then the hammock's got some synthetic insulation underneath it, and then I got a down quilt that I'll wear on the top of it. So I'm pretty much like in a little cocoon.
Are you taking a video of our redneck clothesline
Yeah.
with all the paint and the holes and
That's what you got to do after a tornado rolls through, huh?
Right. Sounds like Dan's going a ways away, but it'd be nice to see kind of what everybody else is thinking, because I got options from the map and I haven't really had the boots on the ground that you guys have. So if you guys are thinking of going somewhere, I'll go somewhere else. You know?
we're gonna be a long ways away. You won't run into us.
You guys are going
2.5 hours.
road trip. A couple hours going on a road trip.
Let's go back up to Minneapolis on some of the marshes by my house.
We're gonna go over to Buffalo County.
Well, we got a lot better weather today.
Yeah, this is nice.
Tell everybody what these babies are.
They're called mudders, and they're basically designed for like duck hunters and people that work out in like the mud flats and whatever down the deltas. But when you put your foot in here and strap your foot in, as you go ahead and step into something that's real soft, spongy, mucky, the stuff that would normally just grab your boot and you gotta pull out, these fins spread out and give you a ton more surface area. So I don't have a ton of actual use in them. I just tested them out real quick behind my house. But I mean, you see some of the videos of these guys using these things, and you'll got one guy who's going up past his knee every step in the muck, and the next guy is just walking. He's only sinking down like 4 or 5 inches and just walking like almost normal.
So where do you find something like that?
I bought them online. You just type in like mudder boots, duck hunting or something like that, and sure you'll be able to find them. They're not cheap though. They're like 140 bucks.
Really?
Yeah.
It's gonna be worth it if it gets you back in there where the bucks live. You got some other cool stuff in here too. Like you were showing me this pack earlier. You hunt mostly out of a tree saddle, right?
Yep.
This is pretty slick in comparison to what we're usually packing into the woods.
And that's with all their camera gear.
Right.
Camera arm. all
Camera
that
arms
stuff.
in there. You designed that yourself. And, you got tons more of this type of content on your channel at DIY Sportsman. Everybody needs to check that out. I'll put a link down in the description below, and you're gonna see a ton of useful stuff on there.
I got an engineering background, so
Right.
that stuff really appeals to me.
That's the thing. Like when you whipped out these mudders, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I expected. Like from you. To have some little almost like device or contraption that you can get in there and get past everybody else. That's the interesting thing, you know. Dan's driving 2.5 hours a day to try to find some terrain that's almost more suitable to his early season style. You're bringing in some gadgets to try to get back in there away from people and on deer. Eventually, I think somebody's gonna have some success. You got a lot of different tactics and storylines already going. So.
Oh yeah. Somebody's gonna shoot something.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, after our morning hunt, we had gotten back to camp and we were all sitting around, and Hayden gave us a call at 11 o'clock and told us he shot a buck. Nobody was with him filming when he shot it. So we grabbed the camera gear and a frame pack and went and helped him recover the deer.
Just driving by the access.
Any bucks around here? We're looking to hunt this place.
Feel pretty good about it?
Yeah, I feel pretty good about it.
about it. Well, we had our conversation last night of whether we should still hunt or hang a set. And I went to the way back of this piece and I still hunted my way all the way to the back of the piece. I waited till daylight to start walking back there. And then I walked through pretty much the whole top of that ridge where there's apples everywhere. And I sat down like 3 or 4 times probably. And I was just on my way to start heading back to the truck to go and find a new piece, and I crested the ridge. And about 30 yards down the ridge, he was just milling around feeding parallel to the ridge. And it was like 10 seconds after I saw him, I knocked an arrow, pulled back and shot. It sounded good, definitely diaphragm. Found blood like 25 yards away from impact.
Sweet, dude.
Let's do it. You might turn me onto this ground game hunting. Shot the buck at the top of the ridge here, and he ran down this valley to the left here. Trailed him for about 25 yards and then found first blood and backed out right away. So when I came out, I went way wide to the left here, and then climbed back up the ridge. Basically,
talk about the squirrel hunters. Talk
ran
to
into a couple squirrel hunters on the way out, right about this area. Went and talked to them quick and just asked them to stay out of this side of the woods, just because I didn't want them to bump the deer, because I wanted to give them some time. So they seemed pretty cooperative with it and were happy and said good luck, but they weren't having any luck with the squirrels. You were, though. I was. I could have shot a number of squirrels. I drew back on a couple of them. So I actually came up this trail here, and I got to here and looked at my map and realized I needed to go a little more to the west. So I turned down and headed this way, and as soon as I crested this ridge up here is when I first saw him. So I first saw him. See this thick tree on the right, in the center there? Mm-hmm. I first saw him to the right of that, and his head was hidden behind that tree. And then he moved just to the left of that tree, and I shot him right through.
We're fixing to go in the hill mode pretty quick here, guys. These babies look pretty steep.
We're assuming that deer are bedding up on that little finger. They got corn around them on 2 sides. Beneath that hill, there's this ag field. There's a road that goes back there. There's places where people can park. And even in terms of the way that the corn is planted, from up top of that hill with decent canopy and no wind, I mean, he could see almost probably 270 degrees around that point, the way that it's set up topographically. The corn definitely helps us in being able to sneak into this area, but it's not foolproof. I mean, even walking through that cornfield, we could see right up to where we would assume that deer would be bedding. We're planning on just kind of coming up the hill a ways back from that area and getting up on top of the bench, and then using the wind to our advantage to get close enough to where we think the deer are probably bedding. And there's probably going to be some oak trees, we're assuming. There's some more ag fields on top. We should be able to look at the deer sign and find a spot to set up. It's pretty cool looking. Don't slip. Here's the bed right here. Just up over the top of that cliff. Just about to say, I'm surprised we haven't jumped anything yet. Just came out of nowhere, just ran right toward us and stopped. It's probably still 200 yards. Yeah, I had to get up where that field corner pinches in. Oh, it's 300 yards. We're on the right side of the screen. We need to go there. So we still got a ways to go yet.
So we're doing a little road trip because the swamps where we were at had a lack of oaks. So we're gonna seek out a cattail marsh that we believe has oak trees in it from looking at aerial views. It's quite the road trip. What are we traveling here? 3 hours?
3 hours, yeah.
3 hours, yeah, from camp.
We're halfway.
So we're gonna have a 3-hour drive back to camp. But if we can get on oak trees and we can get on cattails, I think we can get onto some early season bucks. It's really hard in the hills and stuff where all those oak trees are. Those deer are just getting up, just barely moving to get to the acorns. So we want to get to where there's isolated patches of acorns and the bedding separate, which is swamps and marshes, and get those deer to move a little distance to the oaks so that we can kill them, so that we can get in between. So Joe mapped out some islands where we feel that there's probably some oaks mixed in.
Yeah, a lot of cattails around. It's a heck of a hike. You go down this long driveway, drive all the way back. We noticed another guy is taking his bicycle back. Wouldn't have been a bad idea because we got a hike.
Earlier today we went and scouted some stuff a little closer to the road. There was a lot of good sign in there, but it looked like it was about a week old, and there was hunter sign. We just feel we got to get more remote to get away from the hunters.
Remote we will go.
I went in all old school transition. I am quite a ways back. I'm probably a couple miles from the truck. I got to a point where there's acorns on the ground. I got swamp over here. I'm on the hard transition. There's some little islands and stuff back here. And I started noticing some real big old rubs. And I looked up in front of me and I saw a really huge rub. I looked over, there's a really huge one next to it that are fresh. And I'm not real positive the buck's coming in here right now. It's not tore up, but there's acorns on the ground. He's been here. And I think I'm going to hit it. There's good sign coming in and out, but not a lot, you know, but it could be one buck and he's not leaving a lot of sign. But I don't want to get too close, but there's a rub right there that's waist high. There's another one over there on a tree as big around as my leg that's waist high. There's another one over from it a little bit, just a little lower. And the trails are coming out like this. And I'm thinking I'm going to set up right in here. Maybe in that tree right there, that box elder. And I can cover down there, and I can cover out here. And the wind's blowing like this. You know, it's not a lot of sign. But at least it's big buck sign. The acorns are dropping, so there's a good chance he's still using this pattern. It could be that it's just one big buck coming through here, and that's why it doesn't look too trampled. But the trails are being used. The rubs have been used. They've been opened up. There's old rubs and new ones. There's real good swamp right in front of me. There's little islands and pockets in there and all kinds of bedding, so there's a good chance one could come out. This is our first time ever in this swamp, and we're in over 2 miles. I'm just navigating with a compass. I'm hoping I find my way out. No, I'm pretty good with a compass. I got a nice window through here if the buck comes from that direction. And the rubs and stuff are right down in here. The best rub that's opened up is right there. It's hard to see. There appears to be a real good trail coming through here and going right back through here, and the wind's going like this. And there also appears to be movement coming out like this and some movement going that way. So now all we need is the last ingredient, venison.
With the line and all the zigzagging, we're over 2 miles from where the truck is parked. So we're a long way back, but looking at it, there's quite a few islands that way more, so we could be more remote than this. But the plan is, it's an oak island here. The acorns are still dropping their sign. There's actually a scrape over there with a trail camera up it. Most of the bedding appears to be right in near thick dogwood and stuff, and we're hoping they come out this way. And we would be okay if they did because the wind is going that way. And we're like 3 hours from camp, so we'll need some 9 o'clock coffee to make our way back.
Found him. He's laying right there.
He's right there. Heck yeah, dude. That wasn't back.
He didn't go anywhere.
Holy cow.
Nice shot.
Heck yeah, dude.
So how do you feel about it?
I feel really good about it.
I do too, dude.
Out of state.
Out of state,
I mean, that's
public land, first sit, or walk.
I think that's super sweet that that's what you decided to do just based off the conditions in the walk.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I stopped wanting to carry stands all the time is just because I was tired of carrying them up hills like this.
Yeah. Yeah, carrying a stand up this hill would have been brutal.
Just kind of tell us about like your strategy coming in here, because you had previously scouted this spot, and I think
Yeah. So when I first got to the parking lot and when I was heading out here, my initial intent was to hang a stand, and then I pulled in and the wind was howling really hard, and decided that I would just wait till daylight and then still hunt my way in, going really slow. And then I'd every now and then, every 100, 150 yards, I'd sit down, give it 15 minutes in a decent spot where I think there was going to be some travel through. And the whole time I was working my way up to this ridge top that I had scouted previously and knew that a majority of the deer were going to be in this area. So I got to this ridge top and then I slowed down even more and just circled the edge of the ridge. And I was trying to stay initially on the south side of the ridge based on the wind direction coming from the north. I figured they'd be bedded on the south side. So I was just working along the edge of that, looking forward, trying to see if I could see anything bedded on the edge.
And you're talking about a ridge that's running east and west,
Yep.
wind coming over from the north.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you thought they'd be on the south side.
I thought they'd be on the south side facing down into this valley with the wind coming over their back. So I was coming from the east where the wind was coming straight over their back, but if they were looking down this way, I didn't think they would see me coming this way at them. Crosswind, yep. And I went to the far east side of the ridge too, so I could work that whole ridge, and instead of coming up this valley to the west here where they would expect people to come up because it's easier to travel. So I climbed the steep ridge up there till I got to the top, and then just stayed on this side and started working this way. And I was getting ready to head back to the truck and popped over the ridge there and saw them just meandering around, browsing on acorns, and happened real quick.
Yeah, that's
real
sweet.
quick.
And I think one of the most interesting things about this, and I love like breaking the rules, as you know, but you shot this buck at like
11:15ish, yeah.
Yeah, and most people are totally out of the woods by now. This buck was up on his feet feeding at 11 in September. But when you get close to bedding areas like this, right in the immediate area of where they're bedding, they're going to stand up and they're going to browse.
Yep.
And as you can tell, we're in this really thick cover. Probably doesn't have a lot of hunters coming back in here.
Nope.
Except for you.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of the I saw a lot of hunter side on that first ridge before you cross the valley, and then some on the base of this ridge here. But once you get up to the top here, I didn't see any sort of garbage or hunter sign, and trails were super thick. There's good cover for them to bed, food with those apple trees, and then there's the cornfield over here with some alfalfa, and just trails everywhere. Could tell they were in here for sure.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Congrats.
Thanks.
I'm super stoked. I'm excited about trying to figure out how we're gonna get this thing out of here. That's where the vehicle is.
It's about right over there.
Okay. About a mile.
Mile and a half.
Mile and a half.
Mile and a half, no big deal.
We'll get there.
Up here.
Buck strap?
Buck strap.
Well, dude, it only took us like an hour and 15 minutes probably.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
Now we don't have to do it when we're back at camp.
Right.
We did sometime.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty effective way to do it, and I think we'll probably continue to do that. I mean, makes me never want to put one on the deer card again. I think
A lot of you guys have left in the comments, once you quarter one out, you pretty much never drag one out again, and unless it's pretty close to the parking lot, that's going to be the way we probably do it from now on.
Yeah.
it's heavy on the back, that's no doubt, but
We always have a huge group of guys, so we can spread it out pretty good.
and I think if you're a one guy doing it by yourself, there's probably about no other way to do it. I think even being real fit and real strong, like I don't know that you could get a deer this far out of this hilly type terrain. I mean, we're a mile and a half back, and this stuff's steep. I mean, you saw us walking in and how much we were
And
struggling.
you guys were trying to drag it with 2 people up the hill.
Yeah, I mean, we only drugged this deer ever
10 feet.
and we just about wore ourselves out doing that. It was just hard. And to go down, up for 1.5 miles, that'd be pretty rough. Pretty sweet though, man. This is pretty fun to do. It was cool. Like, it's almost like the same camp atmosphere, but you're just out in the woods. Good job, Hayden.
Thanks, dude. Thanks for helping.
That set of tracks look like it's gotta have been made since it rained.
Yeah, that's made this morning.
It's fresh.
Going back
size,
to
too.
bedding.
Yeah, pretty decent. A 3.5 finger track for my hand size.
Which tree are you thinking? Thinking the straight one right here. Gives us a little bit of size to hide both of us in. And I'll have clear shooting. So, when we came to this area, I had the advantage of kind of seeing and hearing everybody's stories from the day before. We got some river bottom, we got some marsh, we got some hill country here. It sounded like the marsh stuff wasn't super great in terms of fresh sign, but the hills, I had marked a bunch of spots that, number one, were overlooking some type of human activity, and number two, areas that were just really remote. Some of these bedding points for leeward side hills, and the stories that the guys were saying about the deer they had seen, a lot of them were bedded watching parking areas. So we just drove around to a couple of those specific points we picked out on the maps, and this one, when we drove past, it just seemed like a perfect spot for a buck to have a really great advantage. And so it was like 1.5 hours walk up here to get to this spot, but the wind is pretty perfect for it. So we snuck in here pretty quiet, saw just a huge set of tracks coming into what we assume is this particular bed. So if everything goes according to plan, we expect him to come from about 180 yards just along this hill. Ton of sign right up here. This leads up to some soybeans, and we just saw one small buck already. Even it's only like 5 o'clock, we still got a couple hours. They just appeared out of nowhere. I just heard a twig break. I know, they're right underneath us. Behind me, she was 10 yards away. I know. So, it's just about 6 o'clock. We've been in the stand for a little bit more than an hour, and so far we've seen 1 yearling buck and 2 adult does, all pretty much within shooting range. But the weather right now is just fantastic. Nice cold weather. We got our thermals dropping down, so this last deer that came through didn't smell us, and we're expecting with this weather, even though we're still a fair amount of distance away from where we think a big buck could be bedding, there's a good chance that he could get up on his feet early tonight because it's nice and cool. The wind is really howling today, but it's starting to die down. It just feels really good. So we got our fingers crossed. We still got, 1.5 hours of shooting light left, so a lot could happen. Here, take the camera. I want to watch him. He's above the does. To the right. Well, I can hear these in the cattails right here, so I don't want to talk too much. So we got a doe, and I think 2 fawns coming, and like a 100-inch 8-pointer. We just watched out there, and I don't know if he's coming at us now, or if he's gotten to that other island. I'd shoot him. They're not bedded in the dogwood, really. They're just out in the tall grass, bedded down. I haven't seen him cut that way way yet, so maybe he's coming at us. Can you see him at all right now? No. Nothing came in on the island here, but right when the sun hit the tree line and went down behind the trees, out in the cattails, like 200 yards, we had a doe and 2 fawns get up, and they kind of went that way towards a different island. And then a little further out from them, there was like a 100-inch 8-pointer that got up and went that way, but I lost him. I don't know where he did. I would have kind of liked to seen that for tomorrow night, but yeah, I guess we'll have to come back tomorrow night. Maybe try a different one of these islands. There's not much out there. There's just some high spots. It looks like that they were bedding. We'll see. We gotta get backed up and get out of here. We got like a 2-mile hike back, so should be a good time.
Man, it's a long way out of here navigating with a compass. Those guys were even deeper than me. And looking back, I don't even see the lights yet, and I can see back about a mile to where I came out from. Teddy's earning that internship.
Well, we didn't see any deer come through after those 2 last does came through. Could be any number of reasons. Maybe that buck could have went further into the woods, past what we can see. We might not have gotten close enough to the bed. He might not be bedded exactly where we thought he was. But anyway, we're gonna head back to camp and see how everybody else did.
Alright guys, that's it for day 2. Zach and I pretty much just spooked that buck this morning, and then our buddy Hayden got a nice buck today, so we helped him pack that out. And Dan and Joe, I don't know where they headed somewhere a long ways away. Dan didn't really like the looks of the marshes around here that are closer to camp, so they went on a road trip today, so it'll be interesting to see what they found. I think Zach and I's plan for the morning is to just get right back in there where we jumped all those deer today. Not totally convinced that big buck that we spooked is going to be back in there, but when he ran and all those other deer scattered, they didn't really know what was going on, so hopefully if that big buck doesn't come back, at least one of the other ones will. So that's where we'll be at in the morning. So that's a wrap for day 2. People are starting to kind of figure things out. We got 1 deer down already in camp, and hopefully a couple more to come. So we'll catch you guys on day 3.